Here's what nobody tells you about morning routines. The routine itself doesn't matter. You can have the perfect system written out. Exercise, journal, meditate, protein shakes, and still abandon it all by Thursday. Because routines are just tasks, and tasks don't survive without something deeper underneath them. Think about it. You've probably started and abandoned dozens of routines. And every time you told yourself it was because you lacked discipline or motivation or maybe willpower. That's not why it failed. It failed because you were building on a house of sand. You were stacking habits on top of a foundation that doesn't exist yet. The foundation isn't the routine. The foundation is the relationship with yourself. And that relationship comes down to one thing: whether you believe your own words mean something. One promise kept. Here's the habit that changed everything for me. Every morning, before I do anything else, I make one promise to myself. Just one, and I keep it. That's it. Not a routine, not a stack of 5 habits. One promise kept. Someday it's, I will not touch my phone for the first 30 minutes. Other days, it's I will go for a walk before I sit down at my desk. And sometimes it's as small as I will make my bed today. The size of the promise doesn't matter. What matters that you said you'd do it and you did it. Every time you make a promise to yourself and break it, you're training your brain that your word doesn't count. You're teaching yourself that you can't be trusted. And when you don't trust yourself, nothing works. No routine survives, no plan holds. You start and stop again and again. Not because the plan was bad, but because the person executing it doesn't believe they'll follow through. Keeping one small promise every morning reverses that cycle. It's not about productivity. It's about rebuilding proof that your word means something. This isn't meant to be feel-good advice. There's a real mechanism at work. Psychology calls it self-efficacy, your belief in your own ability to follow through. Research shows that self-efficacy is one of the strongest predictors of whether someone actually changes their habit long-term. Self-efficacy isn't built by reading books or watching videos. It's built by repeated evidence. Small wins, promises kept over and over. Every time you keep a morning promise, you're depositing evidence into what I call your proof account. You're building a case that says, I am someone who does what they say they will do. Most people try to build discipline from the top down. Big goals, big routines, big plans. But you build discipline from the bottom up, one promise kept at a time. That's the shift. You stop trying to overhaul your life in a week. You start proving to yourself that you can be trusted with one small thing today. Here's how to start. 3 rules. Rule 1, make it embarrassingly small. Your first promise should be so easy, it feels almost pointless. Make your bed, drink a glass of water, and so on. The goal is not to impress yourself. The goal is to keep your word. If you aim too high and fail, you've just made a withdrawal from your proof account. Start small enough that failure isn't an option. Rule 2, decide the night before. Don't wake up and try to figure out your promise in the moment. Decide the night before. Write it down if you need to. One sentence. Tomorrow morning, I will, and you fill in the rest. This removes decision fatigue and turns the morning into execution, not negotiation. Rule 3, never break the chain 2 days in a row. You will miss a day. That's not failure, that's life. The rule is never miss twice. 1 miss is a slip, 2 misses is a new pattern. If you break your promise on Tuesday, Wednesday's promise matters more than any other day that week. That's the entire framework. 1 promise, decided the night before, kept the next morning. Repeat until your brain has no choice but to believe you. The real point of this isn't about morning routines. It never was. It's about becoming someone who trusts themselves again. Someone whose word actually means something. Starting with the promises they make to the person in the mirror. Most people spend their whole life trying to build discipline through bigger goals, harder routines, and more accountability from other people. But the only accountability that lasts is the kind you build with yourself. One promise kept every morning. It won't feel like much at first, but 6 months from now, you'll look back and realize the version of you who couldn't get out of bed without checking their phone, that person is gone. Replaced by someone who showed up one small promise at a time. Start tonight. Decide your promise for tomorrow morning. Write it down and keep it. That's the habit that changes everything.